Welcome to In the News for Friday, June 11th, 2021. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
Hey there, I'm Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Happy Dub Week, Brett.
Yeah.
What a week, huh?
Jeff, I feel like there was an apple-shaped tornado that descended upon my head on Monday. And I feel like in the days since then, this entire week, there are still all the stuff swirling around my head from the announcements, from the updates that they talked about, from the possibilities coming in the next few months. It has been a whirlwind of a week for sure.
Yeah, and the reason for that is this is not a WWDC where we have like one or two big announcements. There really haven't been that many big announcements. I mean, there's no new app store or anything like that. It has been just a plethora of small announcements that when you look at each little feature, you're like, wow, that could be pretty cool. That could be pretty cool. So it's just a deluge right now of going through all the stuff.
Incredible. And like you said, it's sometimes some WWDCs, we talked about this last week, they will announce like a brand new Mac Mini or, a big shiny new object or gadget or something. And we didn't really have any of that. But man, in its place, we had, as you said, so many of these small incremental things. Why don't we start with generally the iPad? There were several things. You did a great job covering, of course, the plethora of things. You had a great post, by the way, a couple of days ago, earlier this week, where you always do this. You do a great job of like, hey, here's what lawyers specifically or legal professionals will enjoy and appreciate about some of the announcements. But let's talk specifically about the iPad OS. And for these improvements, I say bring them on. I am so ready for so many of these things. You mentioned a couple of these last time too, Jeff.
Yeah. We had some predictions. Like last week, we were hoping, for example, that we'd be able to have widgets on the home screen. And of course we can. So maybe that's nothing, extraordinary because we all saw it coming. But I'm so looking forward to it. And we talked about this a lot last week. The iPad screen is so big. I would love to take advantage of that space by making it more of like a control panel. Put, the information that I need right there. So at a glance, I can just see everything I need, whether it's calendars, to-do entries, just photos, whatever I want to do. So that's going to be fantastic. One thing that was a surprise to me is that Apple updated its multitasking system, which I love because, we've been able to run multiple apps at the same time on an iPad for a very long time. I was surprised when I wrote that post and I went back and looked it up and it was back in 2015. I would not have guessed it has been that long. But the problem is that it's always been a little confusing with the iPad screen. And I think the nature of we're all used to computers where you can see windows on top of each other. That we understand. We've been doing that, for since the early 80s. But with the iPad, it was always confusing if you had two side-by-side apps, which was the active one, which was not the active one. If you have an external keyboard and start typing, which one are you typing into? So Apple's tried to address that. They have these three little dots at the top of the screen, and the dots are darker on the screen that's active. They've made it so that you can actually have another screen right in the middle on top of other stuff. I'm going to have to try it to see how it goes. And hopefully it's better. But for me, the takeaway is I'm glad Apple is recognizing that something needed to be done here to make it more accessible. And so they've given it a shot. Hopefully, the good point is they've recognized the issue. Yay. And have they solved the issue or have they made it better? We'll see. But step one is to recognize you have a problem and go from there. So
it took me a long time to get used to. You can see as I'm scrolling through here, there is something called split view, which you alluded to, where you can have two different apps or sometimes even the same app on different sides of the screen. And then there is something called slide over, which I got to tell you, most of the time, Jeff, when I see somebody using that, they aren't doing it on purpose. It's like accidentally they slid their finger from the side and it came over on the slide over. I find that to be immensely helpful. I'm starting to use it more and more. Like if I had my notes app up or if I'm reading a web page and I want to put something in like a note in OneNote or something similar to that. So I totally agree. And there's a few more under the hood differences and changes like in the app switcher here. I know you've been looking at some of these same articles. Now we can go into the app switcher, which has been around for a long time, whatever open apps or running apps. But now, even if you have a split view with two different apps, you can go into the app switcher and select that now. And I know that sounds a little wonky the way I'm explaining it, but for those of us that have been using some of the split view and the multitasking options, I mean, they're really just underscoring some of these things, which is really great on the iPad.
Yeah, most of the time when I'm using my iPad, I'm just using one app at a time. But there are absolutely times where I am doing some red line edits to a Microsoft Word document. And yet at the same time, I need to see an email that somebody sent me. Or at the same time, I need to look at a PDF document of my opponent's brief or something like that. And it's nice that we have the ability to do that now. And I look forward to seeing these improvements.
Just one last thing here. This is amazing. And again, just like you said, we got to use it, right? You and I are hands-on folks, and this new shelf aspect here, I love that. I'm excited to see how that's going to be, because a lot of times I am switching back and forth between different apps or even windows of the same app, like different Safari tabs and stuff. So that's
this is another one that Apple needed to do something, because it can be confusing that you have multiple instances of the same app. You can have multiple versions of Word or multiple versions of some graphics program running at the same time, and you sort of lose track of all of the things that are open. And so now, as I understand the new system, is when I first switch to Microsoft Word, for a second or two at the bottom of the screen, I'll just see all the windows that are open, and then they'll fade away. But that way I can see, okay, I actually have 3 different Word documents open right now, or 3 different whatever. It's a great reminder, because in the past, I mean, right now, me using iPad OS 14, I have no idea how many different, it's difficult to get there. So
exactly. And another thing that I was thrilled to see you caught on to is the idea that they've made the Notes better. I found myself using the Notes app more and more and more, Jeff. And it's a little surprising to me. And I think one of the reasons is because it's accessible. My iPhone, my iPad, and my Mac, and I can get access to it wherever it is and just make a quick note. And number 2, Apple has continued to make improvements, right? Even with the scribble function that you can handwrite in there. Things that I used to use, Evernote and OneNote and even Notability or GoodNotes, I still use those apps, but I'm finding myself turning more and more to Notes. And I was thrilled to see some of the improvements they made on the Notes app on the iPad.
Yeah, when you look at where Notes is today compared to where it was when it started, it has gotten just a lot more helpful. And these new improvements are great. I mean, the Quick Notes is good because while you're getting work done on your iPad, you can just swipe up from a corner and just quickly jot something down.
Love that.
Is, I mean, it doesn't seem like that takes that much time to like open up an app, but sometimes it just does, and that's just not how you're thinking. So to be able to quickly jot something down is great. But better yet is it knows what you're on top of. So if you're looking at a web page and you bring up a quick note, you can say, this is, whatever note you want to put, something to consider for, the discovery process, a case, or my upcoming vacation. But you can actually tap a button to include a link to the entire web page or some text on that web page. And then later, when you go back to that web page, there will be a little icon in the bottom right corner of your screen that reminds you that you have some notes associated with this web page or whatever else it is. So it really brings Notes, and it's the same multitasking idea we were just talking about. It's being able to use the Notes app at the same time you're doing something else on the iPad, and yet in a way that doesn't, from the demos, it doesn't seem to be very cumbersome. So, I mean, I would literally be using this one today if I had the new iPad OS on it. So this looks like a great feature.
Absolutely. This is one of the first things. I mean, this was one of the things that I usually when I watch a keynote presentation, there's a few times where I yelp and exclaim like so excitement. This was one of them, because again, just like you said, I could switch back and forth to Notes if I'm reading something, a blog post or an article, but honestly, if I'm sitting at my desk or a table, many times I have either a Post-it note or something that I pick up a pen, and I just feel like I'm living in 2 different worlds. And I just love the fact that they bring this in now, and I can't wait. I can't wait to try that. So I'm so glad that you talked about the quick notes on there as well.
Now, one feature that for me, the jury is still out on is, and you have it on your screen right here, is the new Safari interface.
Yes.
What Apple is trying to do, I think, is a laudable goal. They want to have even more of your iPad or in the iPhone too. They want to have even more of your screen devoted to the web page that you're looking at. That sounds like a good idea. And the way they get that is they reduce what they call the Chrome, the bars at the top that tell you what your different tabs are and stuff. So, I will just tell you, for me, the jury is out on this one, because by squeezing all of that stuff together, Have they made it too difficult to get to the things that you want to access when you want to get to bookmarks? Or I just don't know. Maybe it's great that, for example, they've collapsed the place where you would type in an address with the tab bar itself. So we'll see. Now, on the other hand, another thing that they've done is they've brought extensions to Safari, which is something that we've had on our desktop computers for a long time. A perfect example is your password manager. Like I use 1Password. You can use 1Password with websites right now, but you can, with a 1Password extension, you would be able to do, the more sophisticated things that you can do in a computer, like more easily create passwords as you're being asked to sign on to a new website. And I thought it was interesting that on Twitter, I just happened to follow the folks at 1Password, and like hours after the keynote address on Monday, they had mocked up a quick little, 5-second video showing how it might work for 1Password to be an extension on the iPad. And I'm like, sign me up. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I want. So this is great because Safari is such a useful. I mean, we all use Safari a million times a day on the iPhone and the iPad.
Yeah. But the thing, just quickly, I would underscore that you're right. I love it. I love to have the maximum screen real estate as I possibly can. But to me, it's going to be it's a change in my memory muscle, right? I'm always used to tapping into that search bar and typing right in there. I feel like I can get over it, but it's going to be a hump in getting there. But we're not going to know until we actually have the hands on and start using it. Yeah,
we'll see. I mean, change can be hard, and not all changes are good. Hopefully this one will be. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So there's more. There's so much more. And we'll hit a few more highlights. But let's switch from the iPad now to the iPhone. A couple of things that you were writing about. In fact, I think that you commented to me, the iPhone improvements, better late than never, right? Yeah. Some of the things that they are now bringing to bear onto the iPhone specifically, because we almost have to talk about it in two separate ways. The iPhone with iOS and the iPad used to run the same operating system, but now it's we're still almost seeing a little bit more of a divergence there, right? The iPad OS is getting a little bit different. It's mostly the same, but we're still seeing some differences between those two now. But a couple of things you wanted to mention about on the iPhone, FaceTime improvements. I think they started with some of these announcements, which are pretty amazing.
Yeah, and this is not just iPhone. This is iPhone and iPad. I personally tend to use FaceTime more on my iPhone, but part of that is just because during the pandemic, we've all used video conferencing, so many more times than we ever did before. I did so few client video conferences before the pandemic, and now I'm doing it all the time. And of course, most of us are using Zoom or Microsoft Teams or one of those sorts of things. Apple, unfortunately, they missed the ball on this. FaceTime really, if some of the things that they're coming out with this fall, if they had been around last spring, I really think that Apple could have been so much further ahead, but better late than never. So we're going to see things like, FaceTime calls will be able to have people's faces in squares as opposed to the sort of, somewhat bizarre floating faces system they have now. You'll be able to do a FaceTime call with somebody who uses Windows or Android. They'll use a web interface to do it. But so just, if you want to have a family conversation and you've got your cousin that doesn't use an Apple device, they can still participate. And they even have some fun things. And talk about something that people would have used in the pandemic. There's this one feature that you can share a video with other folks so that you can be watching, Ted Lasso, and your friend that lives in a different state can be watching at the same time. And a little corner of the screen, you could see their face and they could see yours so that y'all could talk and laugh at the same time. It's a way to, enjoy media with somebody else across the internet. I don't know how much I will use that feature, but if there was ever a time that I would have used it, it would have been when we were stuck at home
last
for all
year.
Those months.
Exactly.
So, better late than never, but I'm glad to see that, smart folks took advantage of the quarantine to figure out what would be nice to use during this situation. And, so it'll be fun to see it when it comes out.
Yeah. Apple is calling this share play, and they spent a good amount of time talking about this. It seems that they are convinced this is something that they know people are going to use, and you can do it with music, like Apple Music, of course, and you can do it with Apple TV, just like you're saying, a friend can be in the corner there of the screen. And anyway, it'll be interesting to see how this is going to play out. And until, to me, this is one of those things, until it is in the general public, right? Until the users have their hands on it, we're not going to really know, as much as a lot of us like to talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
And by the way, I like this one article, Jason Snell, which we know he's written for Macworld and has his own Six Colors blog as well. Just he's saying the same thing. The FaceTime features might be too late to matter. I liked one of the quotes he had in here. Over this past year, he's been having tons and tons of like family get-togethers, virtual get-togethers. And he said and they all use Apple devices, but he never even considered using group FaceTime. It just wasn't something that was on his radar. It was always Zoom. But just like you've been saying, this is kind of how Apple is kind of catching up a little bit on some of these aspects here, which is good. It's all good stuff.
So to move away from, collaborating with other people and your friends and move back to the world of just doing something on your own, one change that looks to be really nice is the voice to text dictation.
Right.
I do use this when I am, at home by myself and you don't want to drag out a keyboard, but I want to like say something in an email that's more than a few words. I will just use the voice to text dictation. I will speak and my iPhone will write it out. And it's gotten better over the years, but I think it's one of the very first things I linked to in today's post was our friend David Sparks, attorney out in California. He has this great video that just shows you exactly how it works. He had two iPhones side by side, one with the current operating system, one with the one that comes out this fall, iOS 15. And the big change is that now your voice is processed on your own personal iPhone. And why does that matter? It matters because it's a little bit faster to not have to send a recording of your voice up to the internet, have it processed on Apple's server and come back to you. Frankly, looking at his demo, the speed increase is not as much as I would have thought. Agreed. But that might be because this is beta 1. It might be by the time this fall comes out, it'll be faster. But aside from speed, there's a security issue there that I have more trust for Apple than I do some other companies. But still, if I'm saying something that's confidential, whether it's, I feel more comfortable if the recording of my voice is not leaving my device, even though I know now it's anonymized and nobody knows who I am. It's all done by computers and stuff. But I just like that privacy aspect. And then also David shows off that you can just keep speaking. The current system times out after, I don't know what the limit is, 25 seconds or something. But I mean, if I have, I'm just sitting there and for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I just want to dictate a long email, I'll be able to do that. So this is something that I think attorneys and so many other folks that use their iPhone or iPad to get work done, they're going to be using, all the time. And so bravo to Apple for this change.
It just continues to baffle me, Jeff, how we have this capability in the palm of our hands. I'm going to just guess at some point in your career, you used Via Voice, IBM, or Dragon Dictation, or something along those lines. And just the amount of time and effort we had to put into training that kind of a system. And to know that today we have that capability, and it's good. In fact, as you watch this video, which is good, it really highlights some of the things. One, on the iOS 14, sometimes it got the words a little wrong, and it did much better on iOS 15 on here. And it just continues to amaze me. I just continue to get excited about that, and I'm thrilled. To me, the biggest thing here is just, as David says, it removes that blasted timer, because I find myself, I would train myself to do 3 sentences at a time and then stop because I knew I was going to stop. And then I would start it again. And I just kind of hated to have to kind of jump around. It wasn't that big of a deal. But now without, to remove that completely, it's going to be very exciting. I love that.
Yeah. One more change coming up that I'm going to love in my iPhone is this new, the live text feature. If we can move on to that one.
Yeah, of course.
There have been many times where I have taken my iPhone, which has a great camera on it, to take a picture of something, not because it's a beautiful picture that I'm going to want to frame, but just because I want to remember it. I'm taking a picture of a sign or the front of a store, or just I'm taking a picture of something so that I can use it later. And so with this new feature, live text, the Photos app will be able to read the words in the picture, so that if I take a picture of a sign that says XYZ and I later want to search, can you show me that picture that has XYZ in it? It will surface it to me. Or if I want to literally copy that text and paste it into a Word document or email, I can do so. And again, this is not a new feature. There have been similar versions of it from Google and from Microsoft in the past. But this looks like, again, the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see how it works. But from the demonstration this past Monday, it looks like it's really well done. And so this is going to make my iPhone so much more useful. I can't wait.
This is almost like augmented reality, but in the reverse. It's like
Agreed.
it's reality,
Agreed.
and it, and
Yes.
it's like, because right here you can see in this middle picture, you're taking a picture of a sign. I don't know if this is a realtor or something, but now the iPhone recognizes that this is a phone number. So instead of like looking at the picture and tapping it in and like, did I get that right? The iPhone recognizes that as a phone number, and it will allow you to call the phone number just from your picture. That is incredible.
Another example of acting on the information is if the iPhone sees that the word that you've taken a picture of is written in French or German or Russian or Spanish, you can translate it right there too. And again, Google has had a version of this in the past, but I can't wait for the next time that I travel internationally. Hopefully we'll be all doing that soon. Where I want to be in Italy, and if I'm looking at the menu and I don't understand the word, I can just point my camera at it, because I think this actually happens on device, and you can download a language pack so it happens on device, and so I can have it just literally translate my menu as I'm reading it. I remember many years ago, my wife and I were in Russia of all places, and we were in a restaurant, and I was trying to understand what the person was telling me, and it was just a language barrier. And so she finally picked up a basket of bread from someone else's table and showed it to us. I'm like, oh, you're asking if we want bread? Okay, we just had a 5-minute language barrier over. It would be so nice
over bread.
So but like you say, so this is augmented reality. This is using your technology to help you understand and better deal with the world around you, and that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, very good. Okay, again, so much more. How about, we talked about iPad, we talked about iPhone. How about let's do a quick grab bag of some of the other things that we don't have time to spend a whole lot of time on, but it would be great at least to cover it here. One of the things that you wrote about this week as well, because Apple talked a lot about it, was spatial audio. You tell me, why are you excited about spatial audio coming to Apple Music, Jeff?
This is cool, and it's available now if you subscribe to Apple Music, and I've been having some fun with it this week. And Apple has some great demos where they will take a song, like they have an old Marvin Gaye song that they start by playing the mono version of it, which is the original recording of it, and then they'll move into stereo, and when you're listening to it, you're like, yeah, stereo sounds better than mono. We all know that. And then they'll play the spatial audio version of it, which is sort of like a 3D audio, and you're like, wow, that sounds even more. It's tough to come up with the words to describe sounds, but you can hear things more precisely around you. I can, and it's not just that this sounds like it's to my back left and this sounds it's to my front right. Although that's a part of it too. That's sort of like a 5.1 surround sound thing. You can you see the plane coming over you in the movie you're watching, and you can actually hear the plane move from the front speakers to the back speakers. Part of that is there, but it's also that you can hear individual instruments more distinctly when it's done well. And there's a Verge article that I linked to today, and I also put it at the bottom of the post you're showing right here, where the author there showed that the audio engineers for some songs, they've done just a fantastic job with the mixes. Like, there's some Norah Jones songs that, you feel like you're right there in a little jazz, hall. It's like, oh, this is so wonderful. I feel so immersive. And then there are some songs where just because of the way they've mixed it, the instruments used to be louder and now they're softer, or vice versa. And it's just a different version of the song. Spatial audio, it's not just flipping a switch and saying, now let's have it spatial.
Right.
The people that put together the music need to make decisions on how they want it to sound. And so it's different, and people will argue whether it's better or worse, but it's definitely something that's more exciting. So I've been having fun listening to it this week. You can definitely listen to it with your AirPods, but as I understand it, even with other, it'll sound many, even just regular speakers to a certain degree, you can hear it. So it's great. And it's fun that they're doing something new with music. If you subscribe to Apple Music, there's no extra charge. So you can try it out for free. And one thing that I think is sort of fun is I've been like, to be sort of geeky about it, you can listen to a song and go into your settings where you can turn spatial audio on and off. And so while you're listening to a song, you can turn it off and you'll hear the stereo version, and then turn it on and the song will keep playing with the spatial audio version with the Dolby Atmos. And you can make your own little music critic decisions of, wow, this one sounds better. And this one, I think I would have done it differently, but it's fun. So it's a nice new way to enjoy music.
To me, it makes me think of, one of the first times that I was in a movie theater and the THX sound, and you had and the sound went around. I mean, it's got to be, I don't subscribe to Apple Music, so I haven't been able to hear this, but I've heard lots of people talking about it now because Apple was talking a lot about it, and it's just incredible on there. All right. A couple of other things quickly I'll highlight. I found this one in here. I don't know if you noticed this, but Apple Photos has always had face detection. So I just want to let everybody know, first of all, the EXIF metadata. You talked about this because one of your picks a couple of weeks ago, I think, was an app that allowed you to see a lot of that metadata about those pictures.
Yeah, the app I picked was called Metapho, but this is now built in.
It's now built in, which this is what we call Apple Sherlocking some different apps available out there. But just so that everybody is comfortable with the fact, you can now use Apple Photos and it will recognize the face of your pet, which I think is always a good thing there. Another one that I know is more important for a lot of people still, Jeff, that I talk to, and I don't think Apple even mentioned this. This is one of those hidden things, but I'm excited to see this. The print dialogue from an iPad or an iPhone. I mean, I do a lot of AirPrint still, or I work with a lot of lawyers that use AirPrint, and it has been the same dialogue for so long. Not a lot of options on how to print it, where to print, how many pages, but they are now incorporating some additional capabilities, like the orientation. We can never do a landscape versus a portrait. It was just, you got what you got on that. So that was something that I found that was kind of a hidden option there, which I'm really just excited about.
Yeah, and it's nice that if you have a printer at your house that's got AirPrint on it, you can just, if somebody sends you a document on your iPhone, you can just print it directly to your printer, bypassing your computer directly, completely, and it works well. And so it'll be nice to have a more full-featured AirPrint. Again, I don't print nearly as much today as I used to because things stay in their digital form. But sometimes you just need to print something out, and why not make it easier? That's great.
Absolutely. And then another thing quickly, Apple, I think they actually mentioned this in the keynote, Jeff, but it was very quick and not a lot of people looked at it. But I know I paid attention because, number one, for my personal component, but also for a lot of what do we call succession planning, right? In our line of work, we talk about lawyers, making sure that you have a way that people can get access to information when you pass away. It's a very unfortunate topic to talk about, but it's very appropriate because so much information that, our loved ones keep on our mobile devices these days. And I know I share things with my wife through 1Password, which I know you do as well, right? Because that's a good way that she can get access to things if she can't get to me. But this digital legacy, very interested to see. They didn't talk a lot about it, so we don't know a lot about it, but I'm interested to see how Apple's going to roll that out. It just seems like it's something really it's very important, and I'm glad that Apple is recognizing that.
Yeah, the idea is that, when you pass away, before you pass away, you can designate somebody who has access to your Apple data. And other programs have this too. Facebook, for example, has it that you can appoint somebody that if you pass away, they can sort of take over your page. And I know that I did that when my grandmother passed away a few years ago, and my mom too, that I took over their page and memorialized it and sort of managed some things. So it's nice that Apple's doing it. But remember, Brett, you don't have to die to take advantage of this feature, as morbid as that sounds.
True that.
Because one version of this is Apple is also adding a feature that you can designate somebody else to just unlock your computer. So what if you forget your iCloud password?
Good point.
Apple doesn't really know your iCloud password, but they can help you to reset it. Or if you get locked out of the system and you can't remember it, or your kid can't remember their password, you can designate somebody else. So you could designate your spouse has the ability to unlock the password for you, or maybe you could designate your niece or nephew to do it. So that's a nice way to keep the privacy and security, but also recognize that in real life, people make mistakes and they forget passwords, and you want to have somebody help you. So now you can designate somebody, or in iOS 15 this fall, you'll be able to designate somebody to help you with your passwords, which is great.
That's great. Last thing quickly, I mean, there was so much more on tvOS, but just watchOS. I got to tell you, there's a lot of great things coming to the watchOS, but the one thing that I am probably the most excited about is the fact that you can have multiple timers on your watch. Honestly, I mean, I love my Apple Watch and I use it for a variety of things, but that is probably one of the most important things that I'm using it constantly for, Jeff, is timers. And now you can have multiple timers on there. Very excited about that as well.
Yeah, so if you're cooking more than one thing in the kitchen at one time and they have different timers on it, your iPhone will now multitask. It will let you cook multiple things at the same time in the kitchen.
Exactly. All right. Okay. So there's so much more, but I think we did a good job of kind of running, doing a rundown quickly of the most important things or some of the highlights. So let's go to some quick tips. I got a two for today just because two things came to mind as I was watching some of the announcements when we were talking about notes and messages. And so this is a couple of the tips that I wanted to share today. Number one, I just wanted to let people know in notes, you don't just have to have a blank canvas. I mean, when you do a new note, it's just blank. You can type, you can handwrite, which is great. But if you wanted to add a little bit more functionality into the notes, you could just open up a note and there's a little 3-dot ellipsis there. And you can go in and you can say, I want some lined, a ruler, or I want a grid that I can add to that. So just letting people know, many people I know don't realize that there are some of those kind of hidden components in there. And the other thing came to messages. Apple talked quite a bit about messages. Some of the, we didn't talk about it today, but some of the improvements coming and really just some refinements that I would say. But one thing somebody asked me about the other day, and to me, I just kind of took it for granted. You can actually forward text messages to other people instead of just replying to the group. And the way you do that, if you tap and hold on a text message, it will come up with a little secondary menu, and you can tap on more down there. And what happens is the messages move over to the right, and you can tap multiple messages, like 3 or 4 messages, and then you can forward those messages. If you do multiple, it'll just scrunch it into one single message, but then you can send that on to somebody completely different if you wanted to like copy some information. You can always do a copy paste, of course, from one message to another, but I just wanted people to know that one of the tips that I see people could use is just you could do a forward of several, single message or multiple messages. So those are my 2 for tips for today.
Yeah,
Jeff.
that second one's a good one because that's not something that's instantly discoverable that you can even do that in the first place.
Right.
So
it's a little bit hidden.
That's a good one. Yeah.
What do you got for us today?
My one little tip today is I was going to recommend an app called the Deliveries app. It's been around for a long time, but I especially used it last year during the pandemic when so many things were being delivered to our house. But I continue to use it, when you're ordering things from different places online, the clothing store and Amazon and wherever else. And sometimes
Apple.
you have a couple different things coming. Every time that I get a little notice that says your item has been shipped and here is the UPS or the FedEx or whatever tracking number, I just copy that. And when you open the Deliveries app, it senses that you have it on the clipboard and it will add it. And so it's nice to have just one central location that you can say, okay, I can see that tomorrow I'm going to be getting such and such package and later this one, and it will give you notifications. It works really, really well. The app used to be just you paid a couple of dollars for it. Now the app is free, so anybody can try it out. They have a subscription service that costs $5 a year or $1 a month. Wow, that right now you don't even need the subscription at first. I think the only thing the subscription adds now is the ability to forward an email to a specific address to add something to the app, but that's not a feature I even use. Having said that, I find the app so useful that it's definitely worth $5 a year for me to just support the developer. And he says more features are coming in the future. But if you're somebody that has lots of different deliveries coming from different places, I mean, if you only ever shop from Amazon, well, then just use the Amazon app. But if you shop from different places, I like having a single easily accessible right on the face of my iPhone place just to see what my upcoming deliveries are and track the progress of where they are. And so that's a good app. I recommend it.
Yeah. I've heard so much about this app over the years. I've never used it because I'm like, well, just like you said, I mostly use Amazon. I don't have very many, but there are other things that I've ordered and I'm constantly like going to the email in my inbox and find, doing a search, like coffee delivery, for example. And I'm like, okay, I got to tap the right link and the tracking. Anyway, you've convinced me. I'm going to download this and try it out. So great pick on that.
One little tip on this one too. It's not just stuff coming to you. I mean, I actually, for example, I ordered some shirts the other day, some of them I liked, but a couple of them I didn't like. So I sent them back and, the website had a thing that you can just, print out a UPS delivery thing. But before I stuck that in the mail, I scanned that little UPS code, which was on the front of the package. And so now I can actually see the progress of my package going from me back to the company, just to sort of know that it's going back. And so I can see, they're going to get it
Keep track of
tomorrow.
it.
So I should be getting that refund later on, just to sort of keep track on things. So
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Jeff, thanks again so much. Great talking with you, man. So much more. It's just going to be exciting next 3 or 4 months, right?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting
15,
throughout this summer,
yeah.
Brett, as more people discover more features that are going to be available this fall. So we will have anticipation throughout the summer, and then in a couple of months, we'll actually get to play with the new goodies, and that'll be great too.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Jeff. See you next week.
Bye.